That's the same question I ask every time somebody claims this doll came from Toy Story 4, when clearly there was nothing past 3. But yeah, now we're entering into the plus season of Robot Girl Z, which, as the name suggests, is a bit of an extra season that was tacked on after the success of the original, as well as likely to boost the mobile game that was out at the time. I mean, I can't say for sure, but come on, when you're dealing with mobile games, you kind of have to make some sort of accompanying media with them to get those gachas up. With that in mind though, it did end up being half the length of the previous season with only 6 10-minute episodes versus the 12 of the original, which is fine, as for the most part, the characters have already defeated all of the major enemies of the original Mazinger series. Thus, you are probably wondering who they'll fight in this series, which the opening does kind of spoil, but for those not in the know, we'll of course explain things in the review proper. For these reviews, we'll cover 2 episodes per video, both so that we can end up with 3 reviews, plus, just to kind of lighten the load with our current schedule, and yeah, with that in mind, let's just get right into the second season of Robot Girl Z. Now, as we just said, the second opening featured the new villains as well as the new quote-unquote heroines of the series to replace the old ones. Obviously, the greatest loss here is that we don't get to see any more of the Underground Empire, but I will say, I do kind of like the second half of this full opening that they played. I don't know, it just had a little more energy than the former half in my opinion at least. Anyway, we returned to the series in probably the most RGZ way possible, with Zechan throwing fists with someone, specifically Boss Borat, which was the mech of the self-proclaimed rival to Koji and the Mazinger Z. The pilot, who called himself Boss, I don't think we ever really learned what his real name was essentially the bulk of the series, in that while he was mostly a gag bully character, he also did have some good heroic moments. Hell, at Super Robot Wars, he can actually become one of the stronger pilots, albeit you have to put a lot of investment into him. Thus, this slightly modified version of his mech wanted to have her moment in the spotlight, in spite of looking like a living Funko Pop. To her credit, she actually did put up a really good fight against an untransformed Zechan, and was only defeated by a lucky shot. However, their first monster of the week of this second season wouldn't be as easy. Cure Wink went through a hell of an awkward phase before she became an idol. Bong, which yes is this thing's name, was an evil robot from the Great Mazinger vs. Getter Robo movie. Don't let that title fool you, the 2 heroic mechs didn't actually fight each other, and instead worked together to fend off a whole alien invasion over the course of 24 minutes. Yeah, you think some movies are too long these days? Anime movies used to be ridiculously short, and more like regular episodes of their show with a bigger budget. And having watched it myself, I can say it's not all that great, as it is incredibly rushed as a result of the short length, plus one particular plot point gets really undercooked, but we'll talk more about that later. Regardless, the villains of the movie were kind of memorable, like this first girl who was fully equipped in many different ways. But yeah, one of its main gimmicks was that it could reassemble itself as long as its parts were mostly intact, or in this case, she could just reassemble her cosplay. And when the RGZ protected themselves with a photonic barrier, she at least decided to take out a bystander. Fortunately, Boss was saved by a drill that pierced from the heavens. So, in this universe, Chokine is a rich girl Hatsune Miku knockoff, and Nana is a Fudanari tank girl. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of want to see that version of Idol Precure. But yeah, this girl's name was Liger, who was backed up by her partner Poseidon, which if you know your super robots, you know where this is going, as after fully disarming Bong, Getchan returned with some new wardrobe. While she had previously acted as the sole representation of the Getter Robo and its 3 forms through some costume changes, for the upgraded version of the mech known as the Getter Robo G, I guess they decided to make the other forms into their own unique characters. Which makes sense, as each form of the Getter Robo did have its own unique pilot, plus it did justify Team G being called a team, even though it was just Getchan and Jeek who was mysteriously missing, though we'll see her in just a second. For now, they managed to send Bong off to get some idol lessons, and the episode ended with Zechan unsuccessfully trying to pass Boss onto Getchan. Episode 2 opened at Toshimayan Amusement Park, which is an actual location in Nerima that even comes complete with a whole freaking water park. Thus, it seemed like the ideal location for the next monster of the week, who was also from the crossover movie, Grongen, who was a monstrous jellyfish complete with tentacles. Yeah, you could probably guess where this is going. However, she also forgot that on Sundays and Mondays, the pools are converted into fishing ponds where guests, mostly old guys, could do some fly fishing. This was a problem, as she was a lesbian, and come on, tentacle hentai is and always should be meant for girls unless you're a super freak of some sort. She almost fell for Boss, who was trying to catch her dinner. Fortunately, she was saved by the new Team G, but like the mech they were based on, the big jellyfish proved to be quite the challenge. Granted, I don't think the original one was trying to Gichan, in a bit of a running gag, tried to deal with the monster of the week with her ultimate attack, but would be interrupted each time. First, it was with the return of Jeek, who had apparently gone off to find someone as equally chuny as her, which turned out to be this lady named Pon, who acted as the stand-in for the Ponzeroid, which is a giant robot horse that could combine with Jeek to form a centaur-esque formation. And kind of needless to say, these characters weren't quite as impressive. Well, still better to revise this combination. But yeah, it didn't exactly work out, and they got the East treatment. Seriously, I'm still shocked that they let that pass in Precure of all things. Anyway, Gichan again tried to use her attack, but was interrupted by her butlers, who came to save them. Ryoma got quickly taken out, and Hayato was not there for reasons that we'll see in the next episode, and thus it fell on Musashi to save the day. However, he ended up getting some very unlikely help from Boss, who ended up unplugging the pool because that has to be a hell of a strong fishing line. This ended up throwing off Grongen long enough to let Ponchan launch a surprise attack and threw her right into Musashi. So, yeah, a little explanation, I guess. First, this is actually very directly referencing the movie, as Musashi was killed off in battle with Grongen when he crashed his ship into it. But it's also keeping in with a pretty sick tradition in almost every Gear Robo series or spin-off he appears in. He gets killed off and is quickly replaced with another guy named Benkei. This all started with the original manga and anime adaptation, where the guy did get some legit badass heroic sacrifice moments where he single-handedly set off a chain of events that led to the defeat of the final bosses of those series. However, some sick bastards decided to devalue those great moments by turning him into the Kenny McCormick of anime almost every time there's a new Gear Robo entry. The crossover movie was one of the first examples of this pattern, and one of the worst, as not only was it a way lamer death, as he was just taken out by essentially a grunt to the villains, but because of the already rushed pace of the film, you couldn't really feel sad for him, especially when Benkei almost immediately replaced him. Hell, the show even acknowledged this as the episode ended with Benkei appearing out of nowhere, even though Musashi had actually survived, but they were treating him like he was dead. TLDR, can we just quit killing this poor guy? It's just getting a little ridiculous. Still, the old samurai abuse aside, these episodes were a nice return, as well as a little shake-up for the series. The new additions to the cast were not only a lot of fun, but also to make a lot of sense. Like him or not, Boss and his robot were always an essential part of the original Mazinger series, and the rest of the Gear Robo getting properly personified feels like something that should have been done from the start, as Gichan always felt more like Ryoma rather than any of the other Gear pilots in terms of personality. Though on that note, and as morbid as it was, referencing the Musashi death meme was kind of hilarious, if only because they at least acknowledged that it was a bit overplayed and had fun with it. This in combination with the first two monsters of the week of this show being a couple of the raunchier baddies of the series added a little extra to say the least. And overall, this is just some more good stupid fun from this series with some good additions to the cast as well as a little more ecchi. Of all the pretty connections I can make with this series, having a cure be a Fudanari with a cannon dick wasn't on my list. Was it on yours? Thank you for watching, and thankfully, I think we've kind of gotten into the groove for this crazy little schedule we've got going this season. At the very least, I think we've made enough room that we can work on some other videos, like a certain overview that we should get to eventually, I think. So, look forward to it. Until then, though, farewell for now, my friends, and you know what? I think I'm just gonna go fishing for a little bit to relax. The jellyfish always ruin everything.